We're back with NFL Week 8 with some more Survivor picks. Hoping you guys are all doing well and staying alive in your leagues with all of your entries still left. As we get towards this middle part of the season, it gets tougher and tougher as a lot of the teams we've been picking aren't available anymore. And a lot of the teams we'd like to take are on bye weeks too. So it makes this process a little bit more stringent. But as always, I'll take you through this week's games, and there's a lot of good ones, and I'll help you navigate it so we can all move on to week 9 of our Survivor leagues and hopefully a lot further too. We'll start out, as we always do, taking a look at the handful of teams I think you should be considering or already are considering. Taking a look at some quantitative factors like the spread for each game, money line, and the odds percent chance to win based on Vegas's lines. And then some qualitative factors too that I think are critical to consider in any Survivor pick, which is whether or not that team's playing that game on their home turf and whether or not they're playing a divisional opponent, which I think adds a different element that you really can't quantify in any football game. This week too, especially at the end of the video, I'll do a scheduled preview where you can kind of visually see this in a graphical form, each team schedule for the remainder of the season. And then I'm highlighting the games in green. I think that you might want to consider taking these guys later in the year for Survivor if you wanted to save them this week and potentially take them when they have easier opponents or different opponents later in the year. But we'll get to that later at the end of the video. I'll start this one by talking about which teams I think you should be avoiding and staying away from this week in Survivor. The first of those being the Chargers. They're at home playing the Patriots. While the Chargers are coming off a bye, which is a plus for them, the last we've seen of them, they were getting obliterated by the Ravens. Their offense really couldn't do anything against that Baltimore defense. And then their defense couldn't stop the Ravens at all. And I get Lamar Jackson is great, and I really think highly of him, but they don't have a lot of offensive weapons outside of him, and they were just scoring at will. So I have a bad taste in my mouth with the Chargers. And on the flip side, the Patriots, I think they're getting stronger and stronger each week. I keep saying that, but I really like this team with their personnel, especially on defense. But Mac Jones at quarterback keeps looking more and more competent, able to read the defensive better, not really making as many mistakes as he did at the beginning of the season. And so I think the Patriots, especially with Bill Belichick, with coaching and all of his game plans that he puts together, they always seem to be able to compete. Even in the games they don't, I'm always afraid they will. Belichick gives these guys a chance in any single game, and a good example is when they played the Buccaneers. They were a missed field goal away from beating Tom Brady and the Bucs, who are one of the best teams in football. So you never know what you're going to get out of this Patriots team, and whether they're going to compete or not, and whether they're going to play really good football. And more times than not, I think they do. And for that reason, I'm not taking the Chargers, and I think you all should avoid them this week, especially because there are better games. But just as a precaution, because I think the Patriots are always a dangerous team to be going up against in Survivor. You never know what they're going to pull out of their head. Another team that I don't think you should be picking are the Buccaneers. It's a lot of good reasons not to pick the Bucs this week, even though I still think they win the game. They're on the road against a divisional opponent, and that's a huge red flag in any Survivor pick. I almost never do this unless they're favored like the Packers were in Detroit by like 10 to 14 points. The fact that they're only favored by 4.5 this game is not enticing enough to pick the Buccaneers this week, especially because there's so many games that I've circled off later in the season that I think the Bucs have a much better opportunity to win. These guys are one of the best teams in football. They're going to be favored by 2 touchdowns a handful of times this season, which I'll point out at the end of the video. You don't want to be taking these guys when they're only favored by 4.5 on the road in a really hostile environment in New Orleans in that dome. That's such a home field advantage for the Saints. We haven't even seen the Saints play at this point in the video because they play Monday night. But even if they go out and kill Seattle by 50, I still don't think, or get killed by 50 and they look terrible, I still don't think you should be picking the Buccaneers. They're just such better games later in the season. I would stay away from them this week. The best pick this week, I think, is the Rams, as they often are, just being such a good football team with a relatively easy schedule. They're playing the Texans, and it seems like every week I'm recommending you all pick the team that's playing the Texans, and that's just because they're such a fundamentally unsound football team with a rookie quarterback who isn't all that great, but most of all, they have just a terrible defense that can't seem to stop anything. The Rams are going to win this game. I'm not going to go too much into this because if you've been watching my videos, you know that the Texans are a terrible football team. The Rams are great. The Rams, while they might make the games close at times, they're going to beat this team. They're going to find a way to win. If you haven't picked the Rams so far and you really want a sure win this week, I would be picking them. If you've managed to not take the Rams so far this year, probably a good week to lay off that again. circle them a different week and picking one of these other good value picks that I have that I'll go into right now. Got some good value picks. The best one of them being the Bengals. They are 9.5-point favorites. They're on the road playing the Jets. The Bengals just beat the Ravens by a lot. They turned a lot of heads. They're surprising a lot of people this year. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have that LSU connection with the Bengals, and they're just going crazy on offense with a lot of help with guys like Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. So that offense is clicking. But this defensive unit for Cincinnati is one of the most underrated units in the NFL right now, and a top 5 defense according to a lot of stats. These guys are playing great football. And if you look at the Jets, not only are they an abysmal team and an abysmal franchise, but they're out their starting quarterback. Zach Wilson couldn't complete this last game with a knee injury, and they're bringing in a backup quarterback who has never started a game in his life. I mean, how you can't write a better script for this when the Bengals are on such an uptrend and the Jets, who are already in the cellar of the league, are trending downward as well. So this is an easy pick for me. You're not going to find a lot of games this season where you're picking the Bengals anyways. Definitely not when they're favored by 9.5 to 10 points, depending on what book you're looking at. This is going to be my pick this week. I'm riding with the Bengals against the Jets. I really don't see too many scenarios where the Jets are able to beat this team, especially with the way they're rolling out offense right now. Some other good value picks, I think, are the Chiefs. There's not a lot of games the rest of this year. I'm thinking of picking the Chiefs, and I think you should be hesitant picking them here, but keep an eye on them because Patrick Mahomes also didn't complete his game last Sunday. And so definitely, if you're going to consider taking the Chiefs this week, make sure Mahomes is playing, because if he's not, then throw this pick out the window. There's not a lot of games left this year where I'm taking the Chiefs. They're favored by 10 points, playing under the lights, I think Monday night against the Giants, who I'm not really convinced are even a mediocre football team, especially on that offensive side. Saquon Barkley is still going to be out. Give me Patrick Mahomes over Daniel Jones in that offense any day. I don't really care how bad the Chiefs defense is when they're playing a subpar offense like the Giants have. Patrick Mahomes and that team is going to put up enough points to win that game. That being said, too, the reason I like the Bengals much more of a value pick is I'm having a hard time getting a read on the Chiefs this year. They just don't look like themselves. Some games their offense isn't clicking. Patrick Mahomes is throwing interception nearly every game this season. The defense can't stop anyone either. So the Chiefs is a weird team, and they keep getting favored by a lot of points. Maybe justifiably so this week. Maybe consider them taking them if you have already picked the Rams and the Bengals, but they're not as safe as a pick as it used to seem the way they're playing. Still think they're a good value pick based on the fact that there's not a lot of games left this season to take them. If you haven't taken the Chiefs yet, you might want to this week, because I really don't think, especially with the way that team is trending, you're going to be taking them too many times the rest of this season. And the last value pick I want to talk about is the Broncos. And this is a really deep value pick, only being favored by 3.5. One of the lowest likelihood percent chance to win I've ever recommended in these videos. They're at home playing the Washington football team, who I just think so lowly of. I started the season thinking that they might have even had a chance to compete for the division title in the NFC East, and they look like the worst team in that division by far. The defense can't really stop anyone. Their offense is very hit or miss. They rely on the big plays with like guys like Terry McLaurin going deep and Taylor Heineke just chucking it up to him, and then occasionally a big run from a guy like Gibson out of the backfield. But other than that, this offense is pretty stagnant. That's why they're looking to trade for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, or maybe get Tua from the Dolphins. But without the really competent quarterback, that Washington football team's offense can't really hum, and their defense hasn't stopped anyone, like I said. The Broncos aren't a great football team. They just lost to the Browns with their backup quarterback, so there's definitely questions about their talent and skill level, but I think they have a really strong wide receiver core, solid defense, especially in the secondary, and a good enough run game to beat subpar teams like the football team is. So I'm definitely not recommending you take the Broncos, but if you're looking to go against what most of your leagues doing this week, taking a really deep value pick, definitely high risk here. The Broncos are a decent pick because I really don't see them losing the football team despite the close spread and close money line numbers. I think this team's better than what you saw on Thursday night against the Browns. They got a long week to game plan and scheme against the Washington football team, and I think the Broncos will also get it done. Really deep value pick, really high risk, so think hard and long and hard before you pick these guys, but I do think it's a great value there. And now look at the schedule for each of these teams, and you can get as much into this as you'd like, but I'm only going to talk about a few teams. First, those being the Bengals. Besides the Jets this week, I don't see a lot of potential picks that I love the Bengals at. Maybe the only one I could see picking them is, Pittsburgh, maybe, but I hate taking divisional games if I don't have to. Um, the Bengals, they're a great football team, or they're starting to look great. The verdict's still out yet, but they're really hot right now. They're playing a Jets team that's really trending downwards. There's not a game that's screaming at me for the rest of the season for these guys. I think it's a no-brainer to take them against the Jets with a backup quarterback. There's really no strategy here because I'm not seeing a lot of games at the end of the year that I would love to have the Bengals in my back pocket and play. So I think it's a great week to pick the Bengals. Another great week maybe to pick the Chiefs. I don't see a lot of potential here. Maybe the only one for them too, Pittsburgh. But I hate picking these guys against the divisional opponent. They got a lot of divisional leaders like Green Bay, Vegas twice, and Dallas. The Chargers and Denver are always dangerous playing these guys. And Cincinnati is also a divisional leader. So they got a tough schedule coming up the remainder of the season. I think that they're a much better football team than the Giants, and they're probably going to roll over them on the night game when they play them. So if you've already picked the Bengals, pick the Rams too. I think it's a great week to pick the Chiefs because you really shouldn't be picking them much more often later in the season. I'm certainly afraid to pick them in any AFC West opponent, and I'm really not going to pick the Chiefs when they're playing any team that's leading their division as well. So if you're looking at the Bengals, looking at the Chiefs, those are two teams that there's not much strategy in planning ahead with just because there's not many games for the rest of the season. I really think you're taking them. The rest of the games, you see that guys like the Bills and the Bucks, there are 4 to 5 games for each of these guys where you have a much better opportunity in much better games to take them. Even guys like the Broncos and the Rams and the Chargers, I can at least circle 1, 2, maybe 3 games that I'd much rather have taken them this week. So go with my advice. If you haven't already, take the Bengals. If you are taking them, take the Chiefs. Those are 2 teams that you're not going to see really favored by 9.5, 10 points the rest of the year. Not a lot of games in the future that I really like for them. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to keep putting this out each week and try to help you guys out when your survivor picks. Let me know in the comment section what you're thinking. If you're riding with my picks, if you think that I'm wrong, tell me that too. Or if you just have any other suggestions for survivor and just want to throw it in the comment section, I love interacting with you guys. So keep staying active in that comment section, and I'll catch you guys in week 9. Good luck this week. I know we all got this.